Hello, and welcome to day 2 of sexual reproduction. And today's aim is how does sexual reproduction increase diversity? And diversity we can also call genetic variation, right? And we're going to talk about the mechanism, exactly how does that happen today and tomorrow, because this process is pretty complex and it's also the reason behind the abundance of variation in the human population, because humans reproduce via sexual reproduction. So let's get down to the brass tacks of sexual reproduction. Gametes. What are they? Simply put, they are sex cells. They're the products of meiosis, and the female gamete is the egg, and the male gamete is the sperm. And you can see the images down there below, the sperm and the egg, and the sperm a little bit easier to identify because it has that sort of tadpole-like shape, and the egg. It is a haploid cell. It is a haploid cell, but it looks quite a bit like the fully formed diploid zygote. And I'm just going to write that's diploid, and you can see here 1N indicates haploid, whereas 2N here is diploid with that di meaning 2. So, part A, sexual reproduction notes. What exactly is sexual reproduction? Well, it requires two parents, and the parents transfer genetic material or DNA through gametes, sperm, and egg. Each gamete contains half the amount of chromosomes, which is why we refer to the gametes as 1N and the diploid cell as 2N, right? 1N is half of 2N. Use those algebra skills. 1N instead of N. The gametes join to form a zygote. There's the zygote, which will have the full set of chromosomes, the complete set of chromosomes. Offspring are different from the parent organism because of recombination of chromosomes, half from each parent. And not only does the offspring inherit half of its chromosomes from each parent, so that there is a variety right there. You're a new genetic mix from two other organisms, the parents, but there is also this process recombination and crossing over, which we'll talk more about just below here, which leads to this immense variety and diversity inherent to sexual reproduction, which is just pretty cool stuff. So, introduction to meiosis. What process allows for the creation of gametes? Why, that is meiosis, of course. And especially if you are a person with ovaries, an easy way to remember the difference between mitosis, asexual reproduction, and meiosis is meiosis gave me my ovaries, right? And mitosis is how your toe heals after you stub it on your sister. Ouch, mitosis. But that's just a little mnemonic I like. Let me know if you have your own down in the comments below or in class on Zoom. So let's read a little bit about meiosis. Meiosis is cell division of gametes and ultimately results in 4 cells that are genetically unique to one another. Chromosomes that have come together that contain the same genes from each parent, homologous chromosomes, line up to each other and have the ability to switch genes from one chromosome to the next. This phenomenon is called crossing over, and the reason why you resemble your parents but are not exact replicas of them. And this is also why you resemble your siblings, but no two siblings are exactly the same either, right? Or gametes are identical. And this is with the one exception of twins, but twins come from identical twins anyway, one zygote that spontaneously divides into two zygotes with the same genetic information. So that is mitosis of the zygote. When you have fraternal twins, that usually comes from two eggs being released at the same time, ovulation occurring with two eggs, and two sperm fertilizing those two different eggs. So fraternal twins that don't have identical DNA develop in the same uterus, but they don't have any more genetic relationship than two other siblings. So just like to repeat, what's so cool about this is no two sperm cells and no two egg cells are the same. In the same person, the millions of sperm that are produced inside of a male, no two sperm are exactly the same. And when the sperm cell and egg cell combine, this process of crossing over occurs and makes it such that no two possible siblings, possible genetic combinations are exactly the same. And we're going to look at this diagram. Meiosis is also responsible for creating genetic biodiversity and variation within species. And part of how this happens is through this phenomenon of crossing over. So let's just simplify this. These are the genes for hair color. Okay, so these are two homologous chromosomes, meaning these are the two chromosomes. And remember, I'm just simplifying this, that code for hair color, right? So your mom has red hair and your dad has black hair. And these are the chromosomes that code for hair color. Well, because crossing over occurs, you can see these chromosomes wind up changed. There is a little piece that is traded between the two chromosomes. So you could inherit, you see your mom has the full pink, your dad has the full yellow, but you could inherit pink with a piece of yellow at the bottom or yellow with a piece of pink at the bottom, which would be a combination of the chromosomes that your parents already had. And when we get to genetics, we'll also talk about how some traits are visible or not visible, dominant or recessive. So depending upon what's dominant and recessive being traded by these chromosomes, this could lead to many different traits being present in the developing organism. So this is part of how this leads to biodiversity and variation within species and in the broad population. So this crossing over is the trading of a piece of the chromosome, like you see here in this image. And when we look at meiosis as a whole process, you can see here that meiosis 1 is very similar to mitosis. So meiosis 1 is basically mitosis, but with the addition of this crossing over, this trading of homologous chromosomes trading pieces of their genetic information. Then by meiosis 2, we have 4 unique, you can see they're not exactly the same as each other, gametes. So these daughter cells are all haploid, meaning, and you can see comparing the images, they don't have a full set of chromosomes. They have half the chromosomes, and what these gametes need to do is combine with the gametes of another member of the same species to create an offspring. So meiosis occurs slightly differently in males and females, and the names that we use for these two processes are spermatogenesis, or the genesis or creation of sperm, and oogenesis, the creation of eggs, right? If you subscribe to Christianity, Genesis is the first book in the Bible. It means the beginning, creation. So, spermatogenesis is easier to understand. It is less complicated. And typically, when we look at a diagram of meiosis, it's showing us spermatogenesis. Oogenesis is a little bit more complicated because women were just complicated like that. So, let's read about spermatogenesis first. And both types of meiosis have this first division and second division, which is meiosis 1 and meiosis 2. And that first division, you can see, is much more similar to mitosis, with the change that the resulting cells have half the number of chromosomes. So unlike in mitosis, the products of meiosis have only half the number of chromosomes. But looking at these two diagrams, you can see a major difference. Every time a sperm cell undergoes meiosis, or rather the body cell of a male organism undergoes meiosis, it splits into 4 distinct happy, alive haploid cells, whereas oogenesis has a lot lower success rate. You can see these non-functional polar bodies are produced, but they will not actually become eggs. Instead, every time oogenesis occurs, only one ovum is created. And when we think about the evolution of species and how genetic information is actually passed on, this might make a little sense to us, but we'll talk more about this during class. So, sperm meiosis. During meiosis of sperm cells, 4 viable sperm are produced. So this is when we're comparing and contrasting a major difference, right? During egg meiosis, only 1 will mature and be used for reproductive purposes. So, assuming that everything went correctly during meiosis, all 4 sperm cells will be equipped to combine with the egg of a female. And they must combine with the egg of a female because they only have half the chromosome number of a full, complete diploid cell. As stated before, only half the number of chromosomes are present within each sperm cell because when fertilization occurs, the sperm will release its DNA into the egg cell and combine to make the full human 46 chromosome set. So, what happens on the other side? Meiosis of egg cells is a little different than meiosis of sperm cells. Assuming that everything went correctly during meiosis, 4 egg cells are created like sperm meiosis. However, only 1 will mature and be used for reproductive purposes. The other 3 eggs are called polar bodies and usually are disregarded or disintegrated by the body, meaning gotten rid of. The human female mature egg cell contains only 23 chromosomes because when it is fertilized by a sperm cell, the total number of chromosomes will be the full 46 chromosomes required to make a full human being. And this process is different, and you may be aware of this or you may not be aware that males produce millions and millions and millions of sperm throughout their lifetime, whereas females are born with all of the eggs that they will ever have. At birth, it's like 500,000 eggs, which will be pruned by puberty to a set of about 100,000 to 200,000 healthy eggs. And the way meiosis works in females is it begins when the female fetus is forming, and meiosis ends for women during puberty. And then those fully mature egg cells sit and wait in the ovaries. And once a month, one of those mature egg cells is released during ovulation, which again, we'll talk much more about this when we get to human reproduction, and we'll discuss this during class as well. But it might be helpful to you to like place this in a sociological context. You can consider typically, right, males may release many more sperm, but women only release one egg per month. And this is the same way with slight differences, mainly in the number of chromosomes. It's just really humans that have 46 chromosomes, but this is the same way that other sexually reproducing species create their eggs and sperm. And this is even how plants sexually reproduce. And we'll talk more about that in a lab at the end of this unit. But all right, go ahead and complete your exit tickets. You should have some annotations on the rest of your document, but the only blanks you needed to fill in were up here in Part A and Part B. Today, we discussed how does sexual reproduction increase diversity, and we examined some basic sexual reproduction notes and talked a little bit about how that diversity is increased primarily through crossing over during meiosis. So that's all I have for you today, guys. I hope you have a super fantastic day, and I'll see you all on Zoom tomorrow. Bye, guys.